Hello, Adam here from the Vineyard Church. So, for the past few weeks, we've been talking about how we, as God's creation, fit into the narrative of the greatest story ever told. Additionally, we've been talking about how the story also defines our mission, our purpose, the response to what Jesus is and does. That response is to do what Jesus taught us, tell people about Him through the knowledge of our relationship with Him. So, we know that it starts with relationship maintenance, right? Our story and our desire to tell the story is revealing in terms of our faith in and our relationship with Jesus. Now, we can tell our stories in a variety of ways. The most obvious way is to actually just tell people by opening our mouth and sharing our story. Another way to testify is to testify through our actions in daily life. What we reflect in the way we talk to others, treat others, talk about people to others, the stuff that demonstrates importance in our life, the stuff we do when we think no one is watching, all of this testifies to what we truly believe. People know what we believe by the way we act and by the way that we treat them. I remember early in my time in the Marine Corps, the subject of church came up in a group I was training with. I mentioned that I went to church, that I believed in Jesus, and the response that I got really stung. The response was, "I had no idea you believed in God. You don't seem like that type." Now, this guy meant it as a compliment, right? He had likely run into religious types that focused on behavior, and he was telling me that he didn't experience me to be judgmental or focused on how he was going to hell if he didn't shape up. But the part of his comment that stung, and stung bad, was and it woke me up. His comment woke me up to the reality that my actions did not reflect Jesus. Now, to be honest, I knew that they didn't, right? I knew I was going to bars. I knew I was pursuing things that filled carnal desires. I knew I was not praying. I knew I wasn't spending time in relationship with Jesus. I knew these things. But because I confessed to believe in Him at an earlier point in my life, I called myself a Christian, even though everything about my life testified to the fact that I was following sinful, selfish desires and not loving God and loving people. 1 Peter 2 says this, "For God called you to do good, even if it means suffering, just as Christ suffered for you. He is your example, and you must follow in His steps." Then Peter quotes out of Isaiah chapter 53. He says, "Jesus never sinned, nor ever deceived anyone. He did not retaliate when he was insulted, nor threaten revenge when he suffered. He left his case in the hands of God, who always judges fairly. He personally carried our sins in His body on the cross so that we can be dead to sin and live for what is right. By His wounds, you are healed. Once you were like sheep who wandered away, but now you have turned to your shepherd, the guardian of your souls." Now keep in mind, Peter is not calling out behavior. He's calling out action. And there is a difference. Peter is talking about how the condition of the heart of Jesus can be seen through His responses and His actions. So, not only does the mouth speak out of the overflow of our heart, we act out of the overflow of our heart. Jesus did not retaliate when insulted because He was secure in His identity as the Son of God, and He knew that His enemy was flesh and blood. It was not flesh and blood, I'm sorry. He knew that His enemy was not flesh and blood. He trusted God to administer justice, and His faith that God would be just removes any need to reply to an insult. He had no need for revenge because His heart was filled with faith in God. In Matthew, in a teaching we know as the Beatitudes, we see Jesus describe the blessing that comes from a heart that's postured towards Him. One day as He saw the crowds gathered, Jesus went up on the mountainside and sat down. His disciples gathered around Him and He began to teach them. God blesses those who are poor and realize their need for Him, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. God blesses those who mourn, for they will be comforted. God blesses those who are humble, for they will inherit the whole earth. God blesses those who hunger and thirst for justice, as they will be satisfied. God blesses those who are merciful, for they will be shown mercy. God blesses those whose hearts are pure, for they will see God. God blesses those who work for peace, for they will be called the children of God. God blesses those who are persecuted for doing right, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. God blesses you when people mock you and persecute you and lie about you and say all sorts of evil things against you because you are my followers. That's Matthew chapter 5. And the bottom line is this. People see what we believe by how we act. Our actions testify. When we choose Jesus and allow him to help us be more like him, our testimony points to the greatest story ever told. So love God, love people, and let your life be an active testimony that you are who Jesus says you are. Have a great week. I'll see you on Sunday.